Welcome to the Egg Whisperer Show. I'm Dr. Aimee, and I'm so glad you're here. Every day, I'm inspired by the courage and curiosity of people who want to bring new life into the world. And today's conversation is about how we can all help create a healthier next generation. What if the steps you take before conception could influence your child's lifelong health? Today's guest says we can, and she's here to share how. This week's episode is titled The Preconception Revolution, a science backed path to fertility and generational health. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Shippy, a board-certified functional medicine physician and the author of the book, The Preconception Revolution, a science-backed path to fertility and generational health. With nearly 2 decades of clinical experience, Dr. Shippy combines the latest research in functional medicine, epigenetics, and environmental health to empower parents to be with tools that can transform not just fertility, but family health for generations. Welcome, Anne.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so good to meet you.
Thank you. You've shared that your own fertility journey inspired much of your work. Can you tell us about that experience and how it led to your book, The Preconception Revolution?
Thank you for that question because it really did inspire me. I ended up changing careers from engineering. I was a chemical engineer at IBM for 10 years in manufacturing, and I got sick. And in that course of trying to find solutions to my own health, I had to think outside the box and really put the tools back together because the traditional allopathic model was just offering me Band-Aids. I woke up one morning and decided to go to medical school, but the part I hadn't healed was my infertility. So when I made that decision at 32 to go to medical school, I didn't realize what a gamble I was taking as to whether I was going to be able to have a family or not. I hadn't done IVF yet at that time, but I had done all the other things, the Clomid, the IUIs, and everything else that I was offered, and no baby. So I got very, very lucky. I think some changes that I made in my life, that first year of medical school, I got pregnant and ended up having a baby at the beginning of third year of medical school, which is the worst time that you could possibly have a baby, I think, because that's when you're started to be expected to be in the hospital, as you know, like every fourth night, months on end in a row. But I was just so grateful to become a mom. But then what was really more traumatic even than the earlier infertility things was when I decided I wanted to have a second and nothing was happening. I felt like I was having early miscarriages. Like I would start to feel the changes in my body, but then my period would start and be kind of heavy. And so I went to see an infertility specialist and they looked at all my numbers, looked at my situation. I was 38. And they basically said, there's no way you can get pregnant and you need to just go ahead and do IVF if you want a baby. So I'm in my second year of residency at that point. So again, not the best time to have a baby from a standpoint of stress and time and all the things. Again, I just got really lucky. I was waiting for my period to start the pill to start the IVF process. And I got pregnant, even though they had just told me there was no way I could get pregnant on my own. So those two experiences really planted some seeds about what our model is and how we can really help our patients to be fertile and to have healthy babies. But then as I went through the mothering process, my children had some run-ins with health problems. And so then that got me thinking, oh, wait, were there things that I could have done differently that would have helped my children to be healthier? And lo and behold, this whole field of epigenetics has really taken hold over the last 20 years. And now we can really see how the things that we're doing before we get pregnant can influence the health of our children. So bringing that full circle helped me to write this book.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I imagine your eggs heard the poor bedside manner of the fertility doctor who said that to you and said, challenge accepted. I will not accept that I cannot help Anne get pregnant just with doing IVF. And I feel like the way we communicate with patients could be better. And I imagine that was hard to hear from a colleague because you're also a doctor at that point and someone just tells you something as if they're a god and they're not.
And it was devastating from the standpoint of once I had actually experienced this gift of being a mom,
Mm-hmm.
and he's asking, like, when am I going to get a sibling? When, like, he was so wanting, looking around at the other kids and seeing other siblings. And he's like, when's mine coming? And
Aw.
so the pressure of wanting to provide that, like, I think that's one of the most important relationships that we get in our life is with our siblings. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. Like,
Yeah.
I was distraught about the possibility that might not happen. And I did feel like that experience with my fellow physician, who was supposed to be like the top in Austin at the time, was just making me more afraid.
The fear mongering. We don't need that. What inspired you to focus on preconception health as a cornerstone of generational well being?
This is what I really wish I had known before I had my kids. And it's what I get to see in my practice every day, that when we take this period of time, the 3, 6, 12 months before getting pregnant, before even starting to try, couples can have their healthiest babies yet and have very healthy babies into their 40s. And so I really felt like I wanted to share that so that parents don't have to go through so much suffering. Like, I see the kids with autism, I see the kids with autoimmunity. I'm not a pediatrician, but parents bring me their children because I'm known as a detective doctor.
Yeah.
And so I get to see what the families go through as they're navigating these children's health crises that we have barreling in front of us with the autism, autoimmunity, diabetes, mental health, all these things that are just escalating in our kids. And I firmly believe that we can have a huge impact on the health of our children before we get pregnant. I think about it as being the sperm and the egg are like little time capsules.
Yeah.
And by really preparing our bodies, those time capsules, we're choosing what to put into it so that the baby has the best epigenetics possible, has the best nutrients possible to really run their biochemistry and physiology.
Yeah. So you mentioned epigenetics for folks that are listening to us, and that's a new term for them. Can you just explain it very simply? What does that really mean?
So we have our genes, and that's determined. But what has more impact on our health is how those genes are being dialed up and dialed down. So things like stress, environmental toxins, what's going on with our microbiome, the good bacteria, bad bacteria, fungus, parasites, yeast, all the things, all influence that dial of how the genes are being expressed.
Yeah. And do you think, just listening to you talk, I'm like, I wonder if your engineering background makes you a better doctor.
Oh, I think that curiosity and loving to solve problems. And then again, I've had my own health crises where I kind of had
Right.
to think
Right.
outside the box and put unknown puzzle pieces together. And I loved writing this book. I had started it in 2016. I'd
Wow.
hired a PhD biologist to help go grab the data and then start to
Yeah.
write it up. And then it got put on the back burner for multiple reasons, including COVID. So 2 years ago, I was like, I really want to finish this book and get this important information out there for potential parents. And the amount of research that's gotten done in this field in between 2016 and now is phenomenal. Like, it's so helpful. I feel like I've had researchers all over the world helping me to put some of these puzzle pieces together because it's just amazing the questions they're asking and the research they're doing. And I continue to be inspired every week by studies coming out that can really help us solve both the fertility crisis that we're seeing and the children's health crisis.
Yeah. There's no one better than you to help us and guide us. And in your book, you talk about how environmental and lifestyle factors influence fertility and the future health of our children. And we've been talking about that today. So, what are some of the biggest factors people should be aware of?
So, especially the 3 months right before you try to conceive, the environmental toxins are such a huge impact. We know that things like glyphosate, the pesticide that's used on a lot of our food, the plastics that we're being exposed to on a minute by minute basis, what our nutrition levels are, can have a dramatic impact on our fertility as well as the health of the child. There's a study that came out about a month ago that was so encouraging, I think, for men to know. They took two groups of men, and they took one group and they fed them highly processed food, and the other group they fed fairly healthy whole foods, right? So the unpackaged cook fresh for 3 weeks. And then they gave a little washout period, switched it over. And within 3 weeks of eating a bad diet, they could see changes in the men's hormones and the sperm quality.
Wow.
And then by eating healthy for 3 weeks, they could have it switched back. What it showed is probably the chemicals in the food and the lack of the nutrients have a dramatic impact on sperm quality, which is so exciting because, we think about the sperm cycle as being 74 days. So it
Mm-hmm.
should be at least 3 months to impact it. But if you can already start to see a difference within 3 weeks, I think it's really inspiring for men to like make those changes so
Right.
that they can help their future child be healthier.
So basically, the message is not too late if you start making those changes even 3 weeks before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, from my perspective, longer is better, but
Right.
but don't let that, like the idea that it would be at least 3 months, don't let that stop you from doing everything that you can,
Right.
because it's measurable impact on the quality of the sperm.
Right. And you introduced something, and I love a good mnemonic, called the birth framework: believe, introspect, renew, thrive, hope. Can you walk us through what this means and how it helps people
Mhm.
prepare physically and emotionally for conception?
Well, I picked that mnemonic because that's the end goal. Um, we really want to have this process end in a healthy birth. I feel like when we're going through this process, at least with the first child, we're not just birthing the child, but we're birthing this new role that we have on the planet as parents. So we're birthing our parenthood. The B stands for believe, and I really like for couples to get on the same page. It takes through a little process where you can really be clear about what your intentions are and really why you want to have a family, as well as if there are any elephants in the room that you're not addressing that need to be addressed for your nervous systems to settle down and really receive this child. It gives you the opportunity to be able to bring those things up and come up with a conversation and a plan around it. And then the introspect helps you to take inventory, like know where you are, set some expectations about what would really be a good place to get the green light to go to be ready. So just to really help you assess where you are. And then the renew helps to start that process of the 3 months to know where the toxins are, how to get the right nutrition, the best nutrition in, and address some of the lifestyle opportunities that can really make a huge difference with fertility. And then thrive are the things that you can layer on top. Like I really see, and I think you do too, based on the things that you have on your podcast, that supplements can make a huge difference for helping the body work more effectively, be more fertile, have healthier babies, and describe how some of the things you can do around the microbiome, which especially for women is so important for passing on to the baby, but also the men's microbiome makes a difference in the health of the sperm. And then we end up with hope, where we can go back and really look, have we done the things that we want to do to give ourselves the green light and say, okay, time to try. And I really like at the beginning, I recommend that people pick some type of barrier contraception, because I've seen so many people as they go through this process, they start to get so fertile that things like the pull-out method and the rhythm method don't work anymore. Even if it's worked for them for 10 years, the
Right.
body's just like, okay, let's go. And
Right.
so I really recommend using a barrier method until you give yourself the green light and you really know that you've done all the things that you want to do to get your body ready.
I love that. So I do this. The other day I was like walking around going like this. And then my husband's, what are you doing? And I always want to describe things to patients that they can remember, and maybe they're silly, but it's like all the things that you need to do to prepare for an IVF cycle. So I start with the head. I say, make sure that you're not depressed or anxious. Get good sleep, eat healthy, lift weights. But now I feel like the brain part should be believe. So
Oh,
I will now add that to my little dance that I do for patients.
I
So
love
I think,
that. That's
yeah,
such a great. Oh, I'm gonna
yeah,
adopt some of that
yeah,
too, because
heart,
when you
just,
when you
yeah,
do it physically in your body, then you remember it
right,
and actually
right.
embody it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Detoxification and reducing toxic exposure are major themes in your book. And I think those are things that a lot of patients are really interested in learning about. What are some practical steps you recommend for people trying to reduce their toxic load before pregnancy?
I think this is one of the most critical things. So we've got two parts to this. We want to reduce the toxins coming in, and then we want to help the toxins come out. So the reducing the toxins in, it's not about perfection, because people can get actually more fear in their body, but just starting to implement to know we breathe toxins in, we put them on our skin, it goes right in through our skin, and then it comes in through what we ingest. So the beverages and the food that we eat. So really important for men, the air pollution data is so impactful for the quality of the sperm and the sperm count. If we can, if there's suspicion for toxic mold, we want to take that out of the equation in the house. But just so many places are dealing with air pollution. So running an air filter in the house that is a good HEPA filter, and especially at night when we're sleeping, I think that's one big thing that we can do. And then filtered water. I think this whole bottled water craze that we've been doing for the last couple of decades, thinking that bottled water in plastic was actually good for us, I think we've probably done a fair amount of harm. So it's better if we have an actual water filter and filter our water. Most municipal water is not to the quality that we'd want it to, with the lead problems and other issues. And then we really do want to avoid the plastics that are ingested for food. Like the takeout food containers, I think, are a huge source of the plasticizers. When I test my patients to see what their plasticizer levels are, it's shocking. Sometimes they don't realize that it's probably from the coffee pods or going and getting soup and hot foods in takeout containers. So just cooking your food fresh, or actually eating in a restaurant where they're not having to put it in the food containers, are some of my favorite things to implement right away. But there's a whole lot of things that you can walk through in the book.
I think that listeners are going to be sending us messages if I don't ask you this question right now. How do you test for plastics, and how can people
Oh.
get that testing done? And also for mold, you mentioned mold, and I get that question all the time. And I'd love to hear how I can help patients with both things, or basically send them to you.
We have some of these resources on my website. There's a whole section on what to do about toxic mold, whether you're looking for fertility or just in general. It's AnnShippyMD/mold, and it talks about how to test yourself, how to test the house, things to consider with remediation, and then some of the supplements that can help you to get the toxins out of your body. So it's just a really great starting point on the mold conversation. And then the toxins, under our resources, there are two different companies that I use that check for plastics as well as pesticides, like glyphosate and atrazine, some of the VOCs that can be coming from carpet and mattresses and things like that. Great Plains Laboratory, or Mosaic, is one of them, and then the other one is Vibrant Laboratories, and there are also links, and we can give you links as well if you want, as to how patients can find them. And that's a lot of what I talk about in the book, is if you have the resources to be able to test your body and know where your microbiome is, know where your toxin levels are, know where your nutrient levels are, and other things, can really help you to assess better if that's an option. But a lot of times, just doing the things that I recommend in the book for at least 3 months can dramatically change the physiology in your body. I mean, it is really interesting to know where your toxins are, regardless of who you are, because there's a lot of times surprises. You think you're doing everything right. One of my sons just did the toxin screen, and his atrazine was really high. So that kind of freaked us both out a little bit, because that is one of those pesticides that can really impact fertility. And he's 24, and I want to get married and have kids in the next 4 years. So when he saw that, he was highly motivated to figure out where it's coming from. We think that maybe there were some dietary things he wasn't thinking about, with some non-organic corn chips, and maybe how he was handling. He loves to golf, so he might have been handling his golf shoes and some things like that, and getting exposures from the golf course. So
Yeah, very interesting and helpful. So you also focus on nutrition and balancing sugar. Why is blood sugar regulation so important for fertility and early development?
So, our blood sugar has an impact on what's going on with us hormonally. When we have extremes, highs and lows of blood sugar, that creates inflammation in our body. And inflammation can be just mildly or even more severely for some people, disrupting for our hormone balance. But the other big thing, the reason that I think this is so important for men and women, is the epigenetic changes that happen. So if your blood sugar isn't great, in good control, those epigenetic dials that I was talking about earlier can actually impact the future child and make them more at risk for having diabetes and metabolism issues. So, and then for women, it's even there's another layer where what I see is that when women have their blood sugar really dialed in before they get pregnant, they're less likely to get gestational diabetes.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. That's part of my preconception panel is I do check a hemoglobin A1C and we talk about inflammation because I don't want a patient to have a complication and then be told during pregnancy, if you had better blood sugar going into pregnancy, this could have been prevented. Well, the time to talk about that is certainly before pregnancy. So I'm glad that you bring that up in your book too.
And that's one of those kind of hidden things, right? A lot of people don't realize that they have some blood sugar dysregulation and they might actually look pretty fit on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you test the hemoglobin A1C, maybe a fasting insulin and a glucose with that to get a more broader picture, or even wear a continuous glucose monitor so you can see what's going over a couple of weeks. It's really revealing, and it's surprising for people sometimes that it's not where they want it to be.
Yeah,
Do you see
I've
a lot of
had
high hemoglobin A1Cs?
I can definitely relate to the patient who thinks that she's doing great, and then you see a high A1C, and then we recently, in one case in particular, we figured out that it was the electrolyte salts that she was drinking, thinking that she was being super healthy, hydrating well, but they have so much sugar in them that she was basically causing herself to look like she had diabetes when she really didn't. And as soon as she stopped them, it went back to normal.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the messages that I think we both feel really strong on, is to not be afraid of the data. Like,
Mm-hmm.
all of these things have answers
Right.
that we can provide some solutions for. It can be a little bit of work, a little bit of effort and resources to apply, but it's so much better to take a peek and see what's going on and do it preventively.
And I love that you are including men in this conversation. What do men need to know about their role in preconception health?
I think this is like the biggest news for men that there is right now, because I think a lot of times all of the responsibility and all the opportunity is given to women. And so for men to know that by them taking action on getting themselves as healthy as possible in every way that they're inspired to, whether it's prioritizing time to work out or to actually eat the healthy food, avoid the plastics, get their blood sugar good, their microbiome dialed in, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that they can give their future child before they're even born. When most men hear that, they are so excited to get on board and to do that because they're so excited for their first or additional children. They just so in their hearts want them to have the best shot at a healthy life.
That's really inspiring. I'm not sure if you mentioned this in your book, but I just want to bring it up because we're hearing so much about alcohol being a poison. What is your stance on the role that alcohol plays in preconception health?
Yeah, I think for both men and women, but especially for men, there is data showing that it affects the sperm health, even small amounts of alcohol. So in the book, I ask men to consider no alcohol for 3 months. And then if it takes longer to get pregnant, then whatever it takes. I think we're so used to women not drinking during pregnancy. We understand it's a toxin. So if we can just extrapolate that a bit to the epigenetic changes that happen from putting any toxin in our body, it really makes sense to not drink the alcohol. And then I think in our country, weed has gotten so common, and I think that's a big issue for the epigenetics and for fertility. I do think that there's data behind, especially for men, that marijuana can lower testosterone. So that's another thing that I would ask people to avoid in this preconception period. And then I think being careful with the stimulants. And then there's the kratom craze that's happening. It's an opioid. And I've actually seen a couple of patients in the last few months that don't realize that even though it's legal, it's probably got epigenetics impacts and can be affecting their fertility. So I think it's so important for couples to have these conversations and create agreements on what they are willing to sign up for to protect their future child.
Yeah, thank you for touching on that. Your message feels so scientific and hopeful because there are things that patients can do to better decisions that they can make to help their future family. What's one piece of encouragement you'd offer to someone who feels overwhelmed by this idea of preparing for conception?
Every step that you make in this time period is going to be in a positive direction. Implement one thing at a time. If you feel overwhelmed, just get the plastic out of your kitchen. Just start somewhere. And then it's building a building. Like just do it one step at a time, and all of a sudden you'll actually notice your fertility is better, and you'll feel better and feel more confident about it. It really is quite tremendous what I see in my practice. I see people who have failed IVF and told it's time to give up, get pregnant and have multiple babies,
Right.
get so fertile that they get pregnant while they're still nursing, things like that. My oldest patient right now is 47. And when she came to see me, she felt a sense of urgency. And I was like, I need at least 3 months. I can't say it's safe for you to even try. She had heard about me and wanted to get my take on her being 47 and getting pregnant. And I told her, if we collect some data and you give me at least 3 months to work on it, I think it's a possibility. And she ended up getting pregnant on the first try, and she's
Wow.
about 5 months pregnant now. So
Aw.
this whole idea of advanced maternal age and, it's just really changing in my mind. I wish we wouldn't use that term anymore, or
Same.
geriatric pregnancies. I think
Same.
sometimes the 45-year-olds, the 47-year-olds can be healthier than the 23-year-olds because they've really gotten their bodies into balance and created a wonderful garden for a baby to grow.
Yeah, I'm trying to change AMA to advanced mitochondrial age. The mother is not old. The mitochondria are a little bit older, and it's not the mom. There's nothing geriatric about my 45 to 50-year-old patients, in my opinion.
I love that. Let's include that in the revolution.
Yes, totally. So, where can listeners learn more about your work with you, and get a copy of The Preconception Revolution?
It's pretty easy. The preconceptionrevolution.com has all the information on the book. And then my website is shippymd.com. And we're starting a new effort called Every Baby, because I really hope that this initiative starts to change this children's health crisis that we're in to having much healthier babies. So it's everybabywell.com.
Dr. Shippy, if a patient of mine wants to see, or anyone who's listening to our show today, how does that work?
I'm in Austin, Texas. So for the first visit, they come to see me in Texas, in Austin, and then we can do remote after that. They can check out my website and learn a little bit more about what I do, and call the office. And I have a wonderful office manager who really helps answer all the questions and make sure people feel comfortable about that process. In the future, I'm really hoping that I can make all of this telemedicine so people don't have to come visit, but I do love seeing people in person.
Dr. Shippy, thank you so much for joining me today and for the important work you're doing to help future parents and generations thrive. Links to everything we talked about, including the Preconception Revolution, will be in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to the Egg Whisperer Show on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And remember, you are stronger, braver, and more capable than you think. Keep sparkling and stay hopeful on your fertility journey.